Hello, welcome to the Elone Show. I'm your host, John Elone. In this episode, no regulars, because reasons as always. As for our guest, he's originally from Canada, but currently he lives in Costa Rica. He is an executive coach, author, as well as a keynote speaker, and many more. But we'll get into that eventually. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Rob Kalwarowski.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to chopping it up with you.
Me too. So, how's life?
I mean, life's amazing. You mentioned it a bit. So it was about a year and a half ago. My wife and I moved down here to Costa Rica, and of course, the weather from Edmonton, Canada, to here is much better. Edmonton, probably this time of year, is probably minus 20 to minus 40 Celsius. And so outside here today, we're 25 and beautiful.
Fabulous. Is there anything you're currently working on or up to recently?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, I'm an author. My book, Antidote for the Asshole Boss, is coming out in September 2025. We're just working with the publisher right now to get all that stuff finished and ready to rock and roll. I'm working on a bunch of keynote speaking gigs this year. I speak everything from asshole bosses to gaining power and influence at work and achieving your goals through leadership. And then I launched my own, but it's my fourth podcast yesterday. And it's a show spotlighting other MIT alumni just for the 15-year reunion that's coming up in June. So lots of things going on and lots of fun.
Wow, it's very exciting. So, what inspired you to become executive coach, author, keynote speaker, and everything else in between?
Yeah. So I suppose, as I mentioned, right, like I went to MIT. I am trained as a mechanical engineer. And once I graduated, I got a job in coal mining in Western Canada. And my first boss at that job was an asshole boss. In the definition of what I use in terms of the research, he would be the passive aggressive type. And it was this element of, it started to kind of like eat away at my own self-concept and eat away at my confidence. And I started questioning the things I was doing at work and then the things I was doing at home. And then that led into depression. And then ultimately that led to a suicide attempt in 2013. And the part is not that. The next morning, I woke up, got dressed, and went to work. And like consciously in my mind, I knew my job and my boss were killing me. But I was so trapped in I have to have a job. I have to make I have to make money. I have to, be a productive member of society. Like all these beliefs that I had that my parents and society kind of puts on us, that I went to work and I didn't quit. Like you have this like rock bottom moment. You're like, oh, I'll move to the beach. It's like actually on the average perspective, most folks who attempt suicide, they make no change in their life. So how did I get here? That's the part where is more important. So for about 6 years, I kind of drifted through life. I tried to do therapy and get medication in 2013. None of it was really effective. It actually made me feel like I wasn't fixable. Like that's a whole other story about mental health treatment. But in 2019, I was like, okay, I cannot work in corporate engineering anymore. Like I moved to a different job, of course, and like moved to a different city. But I was like, I don't want to work in corporate engineering roles anymore. I want to just run my own engineering business. And so I hired a coach, and her big thing was emotional intelligence. And that ultimately opened up a lot of trauma, which put me in therapy. And then I started doing leadership development. So I started learning what leadership was. I took courses like the Fearless Organizations, Trust and Psych Safety leadership program. I took Dare to Lead. I took a high performance coaching program. And on the same end, I was healing in my own doing deep trauma work with my therapist. And that led me to understanding that my purpose in this world is to use the pain and suffering that I had to help others in their situations. And the research states that 65.1% of people have a destructive leader right now. And so destructive leader is a broad term, right? But it's everything from your classic arrogant and violent boss all the way to what we would call a cowardly boss or a ghost manager. And so I use 6 different types. Well, the research uses 6 different types, and that's what I use. But there's so many different ways that leaders are, one is making their people feel worse. And then that results in drops in productivity. And like we can see this by, the global employee engagement scores are always in the 20% range because most people are just not being led effectively.
So, are there any jobs or opportunities you haven't done yet that you would like to do someday?
No, I'm on my path. And for me, what I'm working towards is creating a community where we can all like heal and grow together. And I don't think I'm going to change careers anytime soon, but of course it's going to evolve based on, technology and also just where I go. But where I see the future is as it gets bigger and even things like virtual reality become more common, I think there's going to be still spaces for people to gather in person because there's still that energy or whatever that is, but there's still a difference between meeting somebody in person versus having a Zoom. And I think that's ultimately where I'm sure my career will be going.
Yeah, very true. If you could live anywhere else in the world, where would that place be?
I don't have one. We picked this location, right? So, and this is part of the healing work. Like when I talk about asshole bosses in my book, actually, if you look at the antidote and you actually do the work that I'm prescribing in the book, ultimately the outcome is more freedom, more joy, and that work was what led me here. I said it, like I had these beliefs about I have to work a corporate job, I have to get paid every 2 weeks, I have to live in Canada, United States, because that's where people like me live. And doing the work allowed my psychology to change, which allows me freedom. And the freedom was to move to Costa Rica. Part of that freedom also was, I got a dog. I got married. I did TED. I wrote a book. These things for me were freedom because like I was told a lot by my parents, actually my dad specifically, that I'm a terrible writer. And, it's like I didn't, I never set out as like, hey, I'm going to write a book until really last year. At the beginning of last year, I was like, my goal is to write a book this year. And I think as folks truly come home to who they are and feel that freedom inside, and that freedom from those voices that are in your mind that either your parents or society or your teachers or your coaches or your boss puts there, that opens up the ability to choose, where do you want to live? What do you want to do? What does your life look like?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, throughout your experience as a coach and understanding toxic relationships or toxic relations in the workplace, what advice would you give to people on how you would deal with circumstances like that?
Yes. So the first thing, I have a TED talk that's out that you can watch. So if you go to YouTube and you Google how to handle a bad boss, it's there. It's about 220,000 views right now. So you can get the specific tips per boss type. Ultimately, what I want folks to learn from this The 6 different boss types have different, I guess, different minutia just because of their psychology. And so there's no like one size fits all. But what I want for folks to really take away is you get to choose. You get to choose whether you want to stay or go. You get to choose how you want that relationship to be. You can set boundaries. You can tell your boss what's inappropriate. Of course, they can overstep those, right? But it's like, I want you to, one, is be in that mindset of I'm choosing, because I didn't have that. And that's what I needed. Because if I had the choice and the boss in my own mind was like, oh yeah, you can, like, instead of telling me you have to stay here, you have to make money, if it was like, no, we can choose what's best for Rob, like, I would have quit that job, right? And that's what I want folks to have. I want you to choose for yourself, because there's also other concerns, right, that I cannot stand here and talk about. Like, what about health insurance? What about your financial situation? Like, there are other things that are your family situation. What if I can't move and get another job? Like, these things that only you can choose and only you know about. But ultimately, you have the power to choose how you deal with your boss. And you also have the power to understand, is this boss affecting me to a level that is unacceptable? And that's the key point, right? Toxic workplaces, they increase the risk of strokes and heart attacks. They increase the risk of depression by 300%. There's a Stanford study out there that says that the way companies manage people in the United States results in an additional 120,000 per year and 5 to 8% of the U.S. annual healthcare cost. That means bad leadership in the United States is the 5th leading cause of death. You can choose. If that's getting too much for you in your job, you can choose to live the life you want, whatever that change is and whatever those shifts are.
Yes, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. If you were hosting a dinner party and you can invite 5 guests who are either dead or alive, who would you invite?
I'll take the Jimmy Carr joke and say, preferably alive. Yeah, I mean, this is such an interesting question, right? Like, I think I would really want to meet. I really like the quotes from Rumi. He's like a ancient philosopher. I think that would be really interesting. Richard Feynman, he was one of the leading physicists in like the 1950s. If you've ever watched he has like, they're called the Feynman Talks. I'm sure they're on YouTube. But at MIT, we watched them. And the way he talks about physics is so simple and so understandable that you can really see how much of an expert he is. And so I would really want to pick his brain. Who else do I got on my list? I would want to meet the Dalai Lama. That's number 3. I want to meet Jeffrey Pfeffer. He's the Stanford professor who did that study I mentioned, but also he wrote a bunch of books about power. Who's last on my list? Interesting question. And Muji. I believe he's a Jamaican spiritual leader. That's my 5.
Very good. Would you rather speak all languages or talk to animals?
I think I'd like to talk to animals, actually. I mean, right now I have 2 dogs and a cat, which I kind of talk to them anyways, and I kind of get them. But we have a ton of birds that come by the house here in Costa Rica. I just think it'd be wildly interesting.
Yeah, very true. Would you ever try space tourism?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think some of the stuff right now where it's like you just fly into the lowest level of quote unquote space and then you float for 30 seconds to a minute. That's not super exciting to me. But I mean, if you could actually go out and look at the Earth, like, like people do on the space station, or you do one of those, like, that kind of thing, I think that'd be really cool.
Yes, it sure will be. What's your favorite thing about the area that you live in?
The nature and the energy. There's every time I get off the plane and I land in Costa Rica, I just feel this. It's like having like a deep sigh. It just, your whole body just goes. And my neighborhood out here, I'm surrounded by a bunch of farms and farmers. So there's like a bunch of coffee farms. Folks are growing sugarcane. Folks are growing pineapples, bananas, like a bunch of different local fruits. And we're not super remote, but it's like everyone on our street knows each other. The community's really close. And it's really nice. Like it's very different than what I experienced in North America. Especially like in cities like Boston and Ottawa, it's like that's way different. But yeah, it just feels different. And yeah, the nature still provides me with wonder every day.
Yes, so true. Would you rather never age physically or never age mentally?
Mentally. Yeah. So the reason for this, so my wife used to work at a senior's home during COVID, and in her home, obviously they had a dementia floor. And yeah, the stories she would tell me just make me want to always keep my mental faculties.
Yeah, I agree. If you had to lose one of your senses, which would you choose to lose?
I guess I would say my sense of smell. I don't really have a good reason for that, but yeah, that's what I'm going with.
Good point. What would a world populated by clones of you be like?
Terrible. Either that or we'd all wildly get along together.
Yes.
It's probably one or the other. Like I feel like either they would get like in arguments with each other because they would disagree on some. I mean, unless we all think alike, but either we would disagree on things and that would become sticking points, or we would just really get along with each other. I really don't know.
Yeah, I could see that, kind of. What should they teach in high school, but they don't?
Yeah, so I've started to see this more. Some of my clients have been sharing with me some of the stuff that their kids have been using in or learning in middle school, and some actually in elementary school. So they are learning like emotions and emotional intelligence younger, or at least in some schools. I think that's really helpful. The thing I think in high school that folks need to learn is definitely like financial literacy and like financial, like personal finance. So like things like how to do your own taxes, how to invest, like, you know, basically stuff around like how mutual funds do not outperform the market. And so if you just pick out like a market ETF, you actually make yourself way more money because you're not paying fees in the long run. Like these kind of rules that they don't teach. I learned some of them in college, but they don't teach. And I think everybody should, like, it would benefit everyone to know them.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. If you could have an unlimited supply of one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I guess it's money. Because money buys everything.
Yeah, very true. If you were going to sail all across the world, what would be the name of your boat?
I think I call it freedom.
Yes, very fitting. What song is a 10 out of 10, yet hardly anyone has heard of it?
That's a great question. That's a great question. That's a great question. I'll tell you, I've been listening a lot lately to a band called Sleep Token. They're a rock band. They're kind of a little bit different. I mean, of course they're not. It's not like something that no one's heard of. Like their videos get like a few 100,000 views on YouTube. But I do think they're really cool. There's another band that's kind of similar. It's called The Imminence. Yeah, they're pretty fun. They mix like the lead singer, he plays the violin and then also sings like some version of death metal. So it has a very quirky kind of feel to it.
Yeah, so true. If you had a year of free time to learn or hone any skill, what would you do?
Yes, if I had a year of free time, I would want to learn a lot about philosophy. I've done some interviews in the past on a podcast where I was talking to Nikos Papadakis. He's the host of the Dangerous Wisdom podcast. He's incredible, just incredibly smart and incredibly insightful. And he just like opened up things that I had never thought about or considered in that way. And I think for a year, I mean, I would love to just work with him and like work with some of these spiritual leaders on, philosophy and wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. What is something people are always surprised to learn about you?
I guess, I mean, I'm a water polo player. I don't really hide it, but I haven't done it in probably around 10 years now. But it's a fun fact.
What takes a lot of time to master, but is definitely worth it?
Your own mind.
Of course.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I've mastered it at all. Or I've mastered some, but definitely not like at a level of, some of these folks that are like, I always joke, I was like, there's probably like 4 people on a mountaintop that are like meditating and floating, just undisturbed by anything. Like of course, I've done significant work on my own psychology, and it has immensely changed my life and immensely changed my day to day. And of course, that journey for me, I don't think it ever ends. And so I'm always learning new things. And I think the thing for folks out there, right, is like in internal family systems therapy, they always talk about how when you start getting, like upset or frustrated or sad or angry, like that's a trailhead to go down, to try to understand why and to unlock that curiosity. And I think, of course, as you heal some of the the big problems, or like the problems that are like right in your face in the early times, like for me, when I was like really in the suicidal part, like I had to do a lot of healing. But then as that's sort of gone away, well, not gone away, but it's like as that's lessened, now I'm getting into, deep random things. I mean, they're not random, but like here's one, for example. Like I went to a retreat last year, and at the end of the retreat, it was like, hey, we're going to do a singing circle together. And so it's like 15 people in this singing circle. And there was like a part of me that was like freaking out about singing in front of other people. And it's like, and then my conscious mind is like, I've literally stood on a TED stage and talked about how I tried to take my own life. But I can't, but I'm like really scared about singing in front of 15 people that, like in 2 days, I won't interact with them ever again. And it's just interesting. Like, I mean, of course it's all childhood stuff, but it's like, it's just interesting that, new things will always pop up. And then that leads you down a path of how do I heal and reconcile with those parts? Mainly so then they feel safe, and then I can feel safe in the world.
Yeah, I can see that. What is the best way to stay motivated?
Motivation is a misnomer, right? So motivation typically means something from the outside. So either I'm motivated to make more money, I'm motivated to not look bad in front of my boss, I'm motivated to, do a great thing so a lot of people applaud me, like whatever that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Inspiration comes from the inside. And that doesn't require people externally to validate you. And this is like, I can see my values and why I'm building towards this right now. And so for me, that's really what I recommend, both for myself, and I do this, but also for my clients, is stay in tune with what are you building. And like you can use, like I use visualization tools with folks and I use it myself, is like, in 10 years, what do you want your life to look like? And what are those feelings that you want to get from that? And that's your inspiration that's going to help you today. Because what do you need to do today that'll help you take a step towards what you want to build?
Yes, that is so true. And that is all we have for this episode. It was great having you on, Rob, talking about being an executive coach, your author work, keynote speaker at one point, and of course, having the ability to be free however you feel and wherever you feel like it, and much more. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Peter. For folks out there, if you want to learn more about me, you can go to my website, robkalwarowski.com, KALWAROWSKY. Also on that website, if you click the book tab at the top, you can put in your email and get 2 free chapters of the book. You can't buy the book yet. It'll be published in September, but there'll be a pre-launch. But if you put your info in there and you get the chapters, we will definitely reach out to you when we're ready to rock and roll.
Fantastic. And until next time, stay tuned for more.